Right. Welcome everyone along here today on this interesting way of doing it. We have no public forum today. Condolences.
Rob, we just need to have an apology for Duncan.
Stu, oh sorry, there's an apology from the mayor too, is there?
Oh, and Duncan, Helm.
Oh, is he not coming?
No.
Oh, look at that, on my thing, he's not coming. Look at that. So can we have someone move that the apology from Duncan Helm be accepted, please? I'll move that.
I'll second.
Seconded by Sue Umbers. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right. No. Start at the top. Look at that. So condolences, and ask everyone to stand for a moment for the condolences of Trevor Lowen, Francis Peaty, and Gaynor Gilchrist as members of the Maniototo community. Thank you very much. Right. Can we have someone move the confirmation of the minutes from the previous meeting, please?
Yeah, I'll move that.
Sue Umbers. I'll second it. Mark Harris. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right. So just remind members, anything they think is coming up that they have an interest in, can they please declare their interest? Right. First one, Julie, Naseby water supply.
Right. Do I turn my camera on, Rebecca, while I'm presenting?
Yes, please,
Yep.
Julie. Wayne, can you please try and invite Stu?
Okay.
Right. So the council considered a report from staff and Becca, because who were the consultants at the August council meeting, and so I'm providing that report to the community board for your information and to answer any questions that you might have. That the council have approved proceeding with constructing a clarifier at Naseby to address well, it'll provide some resilience to those extreme weather events when the water gets really dirty, and there's a couple of other additional treatment processes in there with flocculation tank and some pH correction. We're also basically what we've discovered as we've worked through the issues at Ranford, at Naseby, and then at the same time we've been investigating water treatment upgrades for the Ranfurly water supply and the Patiaroa water supply, is that there's a real issue with this surface water sources that we're using in the Maniototo, because they're really vulnerable to these sorts of weather events that are happening reasonably frequently. And when that happens and we get the high levels of silt in the water, we can't put them through these more advanced treatment plants that have lower cost types of filtration systems in them. And really the only alternative is to either find a different water source that doesn't, that's a groundwater source that wouldn't be prone to those sorts of events, or else to have something like a membrane treatment plant, which puts us into a whole different sphere of capital cost upgrade. And so what we're proposing to do is to do an investigation into the potential for a single water supply and treatment process plant for the different water supplies in the Maniototo, and investigate that before we go ahead and spend significant sums of money just on the Naseby supply. We believe that the clarifier will deal with most of those weather events. One of the criticisms that we did get from the community, or the beliefs in the community, was that the reservoir storage was insufficient and that it had run, the reservoirs were running low before the event happened. And the review done by Beckers has confirmed that that wasn't the case, that the reservoir was as close to fill as we would expect it to be just immediately prior to the event. And the cost to provide increased water storage to get a few more days storage is really significant. And to be honest, it wouldn't actually remove the boil water notice, because the siltation in the water lasts for several weeks when it occurs. So we have been working on the design and the procurement for a new clarifier, but we have, in the interim, we've actually managed to source a second-hand one from Watercare. And so we're hoping to get that down here and installed in the next couple of months, so that will be in place for Christmas, and we'll still go ahead and put the new one in as well. And then that second-hand one will give us an extra bit of kit that we'll have that we can use elsewhere later on if we need it. There was some recommendations made to improve the communication during the event, and I've actually got a couple of staff on this call today. One is Ian Evans, who is our new water manager, who's come to us from Southland District Council, and also we've got Philippa Bain, who's just started this week, who's going to be our water services team leader. And Philippa has a lot of experience in communication with customers, particularly around these sort of significant events. Philippa's come to us from Sydney Water. So we're going to put some processes in place to streamline our communications when these sorts of events happen. The report from Beck has identified that it was a really significant event, that there was multiple infrastructure issues happening at the same time, and that overall we did a good job in responding to those events when you take into account what was happening in Ranfurly and Patearoa as well, and the impacts on the roading network. But as always, there are some things that we can learn, and those things are included in the report to council, and we are working through implementing them before Christmas. So I'll take any questions.
Julie, Robert has it here.
Yeah.
I got told by a person from Naseby that, and Ken Gillespie told me they were looking at pumping it from the Torrey River.
No, not necessarily. We don't have a solution yet. So what we will be doing is holding a workshop session, and that's scheduled for October, when we will bring the different stakeholders together, and potentially yourself, Robert, from the community board, to look at what the problems are, and then we'll identify what it is we need to achieve in terms of outcomes. And then we'll start working through different a long list of options, and we'll compare those options to the objectives we need to achieve, and that'll give us a short list, and then that short list will do some further investigations. But we just need to look at all of the options, identify whether they're going to give us what we want, and then do a bit more detailed investigation into a couple of them, which will cost us a bit of money to do that investigation.
Okay, yeah, but what I mean is, from the Torrey, one of the things they're looking at.
Look, that would absolutely be one option, but there is no option that's not on the table at this point.
Yep.
Yep.
And obviously, there are some weather events that no matter how good your kit is, it isn't going to cope, is it, if you have an open source of water coming to your plant? So I mean,
yes,
you put a clarifier in, but if you get 3 inches of rain in an hour, you know, there's a certain point where it doesn't matter what you've got, it's going to require boil water notices and tankers and things. The other question I was going to ask you is, if you have one plant for Patearoa, Naseby and Ranfurly, how does that work? Because you'd have to pump it everywhere, would you, to get it from the reservoir to the different locations?
Yes, potentially, yes. Yeah. It's just that these, so in terms of your first statement, so yes, there are weather events that are really challenging, but we need to be able to provide a water supply that consistently meets the requirements and meets the expected types of events that are going to happen. And these events are just happening way too frequently. So we need to put sufficient processes in place to be able to deal with those events, which is why the cost of the treatment is going to start going up quite significantly because of the number of different processes that will need to be put into place, which is why we start looking at a single treatment plant rather than having 3, because in that situation it might be more cost effective in the long term to have one really high quality treatment plant and pump the water than it would be to have 3 of those sorts of high tech treatment plants. And the operational requirements around the plants gets quite a lot higher too, as well as the electricity costs and that of operating multiple plants. So that'll be part of the analysis that we have to do to understand whether one single plant and pumped supplies is going to be more cost effective in the long term than 3 different plants. But as you can see, we've already spent a lot of money in Naseby, and so we could end up in a situation where we're spending, similar amounts of money, if not more, in both Ranfurly and Patearoa, and still be having these problems that really are not acceptable to the public or to water regulators.
And I guess the one thing about the river is that it's less affected by drought because it's such a big volume of water in the river, isn't there?
Yeah.
As opposed to the little source up in the mountains, which is quite insignificant when you see it.
Yeah.
Well, the only reason it's less affected by drought is because the irrigation company drop water into it. That's what keeps the Taieri going in the summer. So you're going to be looking at cost of buying it off them too.
Yeah, so we do buy water off the irrigators already for both the Naseby and to top up the Ranfurly supply in dry seasons as well. So, and certainly we'll be looking to include some irrigators, some representatives from the irrigation companies in those workshops that we have.
Those workshops will be held in the council, like we'll all be involved in that, won't we? Like the community board?
No, they're not. They're not an elected member workshop. There'll be a workshop where we bring in sort of specialist people who understand about water treatment. We'll have potentially someone from the ORC. We'll have representatives from different groups all together, and we have to keep it to a limit of about 10 to 12 people, because if it gets any bigger than that, then we're not going to be able to get through the process in the workshop that we have to get through.
Is there local representatives there then doing it? Or are we just going to get someone off the irrigation company? Because the issue I've got with it, and it's probably going to tie in all with Three Waters as well, is like the Gerald George's water right. There's a lot of water in that Gerald George's water right. So is it deemed to fail? And this is the issue I've got, is that with the regional council and deemed water permits and all that, where my issue with the consultancy of all these processes is that local knowledge is not taken into it. Now, Gerald Dowling rang me, and I hope Ken Gillespie or Gerald Dowling are involved in these processes, and even some of our members of our community, because he said that they could have a supply out of their supply from the Uburn, which is one gully back from where the Naseby gets its water supply. Now, I just hope that the process, that all of those things are looked at, because anything with gravity for a start and the supply we've got is maybe we should be looking at our source at our top end of town. But I think this whole lot of this process lines itself up with Three Waters, and they become horribly expensive for our communities, and really they function other than a couple of weather events. Naseby may be the supply there come out of the East Uburn, but really I just think it's we've got to have more local input for that water knowledge, because I think some of the consultants coming down aren't giving us what we want to explore.
So there will be local representatives in that group, definitely. That's absolutely critical that we have that, and they will be part of that group. It's not all a lot of consultants, but there will be some consultants. It's a mixture of different stakeholders.
Yeah, because the water that Hawkden supply to Naseby normally comes out of the East Uburn, and in a wet event they can't use it. So that what they were looking at was actually with the Uburn Dam. Julie was seeing if they could, in a weather event, they could actually get water from the Uburn Dam around to Naseby that would stay clean.
Yeah.
They'd
And
still-
so,
they still have
yeah.
that same before the run onto the race.
So what we do is in these workshops is we get all those people together and we talk through we get a list of what all of the problems are. So we try to make sure we really understand what the problems are before we start jumping to the solutions, and that we look at every different types of solution that there could potentially be and then work through those.
Yep, no, it's just what we've got to go through with at the moment, and get it done.
And look, to give you some sort of context here, where, you know, the Lake Dunstan water supply and the Cromwell water supplies are up between $15,000 and $20,000, $15 and $20 million, you know, heading up to sort of $17-18 million to put those in. So when you start looking at membrane treatment, it's big money that you're looking at. So it's really important that we work through this thoroughly and we get it right.
Yep. It won't be an easy process either, unfortunately. It'll be a process that takes a bit of time, and unfortunately there'll be plenty of people in Naseby that won't be happy no matter what you do.
Well, that's why the council have approved putting the clarifier in the interim to try to make things better.
Yep. Yeah. Well.
But one of the big. Sorry.
No, you keep going.
One of the big challenges we've had is getting some really robust information about actually how many people are in Naseby over that peak period, because when we look at the data that comes out of cell phones and the analysis of that would indicate that there's, you know, just under 1,000 people, but the community are telling us quite, you know, 2 to 3 times that number. So that makes a really big difference when you're designing the capacity of your treatment plant, whether it needs to be 2 or 3 times bigger than what you're building it for.
Yeah, the trouble, the number of people in Naseby is up for debate. As you say, you're getting cell phone pings of around 1,000. Then you've got to add in children that don't have cell phones and older people don't. And the coverage is a bit of an issue there as to where they're working.
Yeah. So they do include all that in their analysis to get that 1,000 number, but that part of one of the recommendations in the report that we will be implementing is to try and do a bit of a survey of the properties in Naseby to get a better understanding of how many people are actually there over the peak period.
No, it's just going to take time too, unfortunately. It's won't be in 5 minutes. Right. Anything else for Julie? Anyone else? Any other questions?
Right.
Right. I think I'm getting this right. So you got anything else to add to that, Julie?
No.
No. Rightio. So where are we? Wayne. Do we have to move that report now?
Yes, please.
I'm just having a quick read in this other bit here. So that's what I was going to ask you, Julie. The clarifier. I've seen a diagram of one. So the water obviously goes in and goes round and round and round, and it drops all the silt out somehow.
Yes, and you need any more detail than that, Ian Evans is on here, and he's going to need to jump in to give you the more technical detail of how it works.
Does anyone want to hear that? Would anyone like to know? Stu or Mark?
No, not really, as long as it does work.
Yeah, I just saw a diagram. So they obviously need a bit of a holding pond for the silt to go into.
Yeah, so there's a waste stream that comes out of it. Hi, Ian.
Yeah.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Right.
Yeah, so essentially it's a process for settling out all of that silt that gets washed down. So up front there'll be a bit of flocculation, so a lot of flocculant, which brings all the particles together and just makes it easier for it to settle within the tubes inside the clarifier. So that's basically a physical settlement process.
Okay, so you need a reasonable area for it to settle in, or do you have something that?
No, because it's got a series of angled plates within the clarifier itself, it vastly increases the surface area. So you can do the same in a relatively smaller footprint.
Right.
What sort of volume does it put through?
What's that, Mark? Sorry, Mark.
What
You have a
sort
quick.
of volume does it be?
The clarifiers, the one that's out for tender and the second-hand one have a throughput of about 25 cubic meters an hour, which is probably around about the plant capacity itself anyway, which is, as I'm led to believe, 5 litres a second throughput.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And that is actually one of our challenges, even without a weather event, is just, and why it's so important to get an understanding of how many people are in Naseby, because there is some, there's a capacity limit on the plant itself. And one of the recommendations of Becker's was that we duplicate that process at quite a lot more cost so that we could increase the capacity through the plant, and that would provide more resilience than storage would. But we just want to do this other work to understand the more broader issues around what we're going to do with water in the Maniototo before we take any more steps in investing more money on that treatment plant.
Okay, yeah. So that clarifier, you're talking about installing that before Christmas, before the new year, John?
Yep, Ian, you can answer that one, yeah.
Certainly, there's a better chance of getting the second-hand one from Watercare installed. It's in the country at the moment. All it needs to be doing is get the settling plates changed out in that, which Watercare can do when the alert levels that allow them to do, and then it'll get shipped down. So yeah, that one definitely, I'd say before Christmas. The one that we've got out for out for tender is probably likely to be after Christmas, given the lead-in times with some of this equipment. Hence the idea to purchase the second-hand one as basically a plan B.
Okay. Thank you, Ian. Any questions? Any more questions, anyone?
No, all good.
Right. Can we have someone move that report be accepted, please?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Mark Harris, seconder, please.
I'll second it.
Stuart Duncan, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried, thank you. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Ian. Hopefully
Thanks.
keep people off their
Okay.
backs.
You getting sick of water yet, Julie, are you?
Pardon?
I'll tell you what it's taken. It's most of my job now. Water.
Yeah, I was going to say between that and 3 waters and every other damn thing.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Roading's kind of taken a back seat.
Well, the weather's been that good, the roads are in pretty good nick, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. What are we on to? Maniototo financial report.
Leanne's going to present this, Rob.
Oh, there we go. I can see you, Leanne. How are you?
I'm great. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a beautiful day here.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm going to take you through the financials today, and instead of Donna. Donna's got ahead in the annual report, given it's that time of the year. This report is noting the results for the 30th of June. Please be aware that obviously they're unaudited because we haven't done an annual report yet. And in a couple of places, I will refer to the annual plan as opposed to the revised budget, just so that you're across, what we report on for our annual report. So for the period ending 30 June, we had a favourable variance of 116k against our revised budget. Sorry, 116, and that includes some valuation gains. Our income was slightly ahead with receiving the additional funds from the reserves contribution. That's a hard one to gauge timing, and we never know which year they're going to fall into. We obviously end up with that variance. The total income annual plan to revised budget is very, very similar. Expenditure for the period ending 30 June, we were way down on our budget, coming in 112k favourable, which is always good. Depreciation was ahead of budget. I don't know if you recall us going through the pools got revalued last year after we'd done the annual plan, and so the depreciation is higher than we'd originally expected. Offset by favourable variances in staff and other costs around our contracts and repairs and maintenance budget. They are often a needs-based and vary against the budgets, depending on how the workload flows. Looking ahead at our capital expenditure, for the end of the year, we finished 62% against our revised budget, but comparing it to the annual budget, we look like we've achieved more at 157%. And that's primarily due to the carry forwards and doing that additional work in other reserves.
Yep.
Key things achieved overall was the Cemetery Gates project is going to council in this month actually to request carry forwards into the new year. The tree work was completed. Community halls project still outstanding due to structural issues with it. And the Maniototo Stadium heat pump and hot water cylinder, again, we're going to look at carrying that forward into the new year. And then finally, there's just a brief table there on the reserves, but again, unaudited. Looking at the results for this year and how we perceive it'll be, we should be looking at the end of this year of around 472,000 reserves. Happy to take any questions.
Right. On the farms, they're putting water meters in at the moment, like on the races that supply water to the east farms we have. Are we up for any of the cost for putting the water meter in? Do you know?
I'm not aware of that, but Julie may have an answer for that one for us.
So I would expect that's a resource consent requirement for their water take. So it's not a council thing to put those in. It's not a council water project. That's what I'm saying. So that would be a property question, Rob. But we can ask the property people if we're paying for those.
Yeah, well, they're just putting a couple of new water fluing meters in the race that supplies water down that way. And I was out today and I just wondered, because they didn't know who was paying for it all. I thought, oh, it must be the irrigation committee, and they thought all the farmers were chipping in a bit. And I thought, well, it goes down to the Maniototo farm. So I wondered if we were up for that, or if the farm leasee was up to that.
Well, the east side one's in a pipe anyway. It has been since they.
Yeah, this is the west side mark where it comes down that race out of
Gibson's there.
Rex Gibson's, yeah.
Yeah, it was just an open chute. They've obviously going to put a pipe in it with a meter in it or something. Like that.
Yeah, well, they've got to upgrade it to for the regional council and water loss, I think, just to keep it all tickety-boo.
Yeah, we're all having to do those sorts of things to be able to demonstrate where the water's going and how much water's being taken and how much is being lost. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and I just wondered if we were getting a bill for it, or if the leasee was getting a bill for it. That was all. You obviously don't know at this stage.
No, I'd have to ask Gareth about that.
Yep, that's right. But that's about it. Anyone else got any questions? Stu, you're remarkably quiet today. Are you doing something else there?
I'm listening. I've just about cancelled the 3 waters out, so water meters and water in the financials. Yeah, no, through a fair bit of it in the last couple of months, haven't we, Leanne?
We certainly have, Joe. We certainly have.
So any questions for Leanne?
No, all good.
Sue, you're quite happy there?
I'm good.
All right. Now you have someone move that report be accepted, please.
I'll do that since it's so quiet.
Stu Duncan, seconded. Sue Umbers, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The Mayor's report, he's not here, so it's all right. It's up to me. Chair's report. I've had a couple of meetings in Naseby with people that are concerned about the water, and I've just, as I've said, people like Becca were doing surveys to see what they could do and how it was going to work, so that I can ring a couple of them and tell them that things are on the projects underway. The water tanks, when we were on boiled water notice, particularly the one at the hospital, they got these portable tanks, and most people were unable to get water out of them because the outlet was right down just about on ground level, so you couldn't put anything under that. You couldn't put a say a 5 litre container under it and fill it up with water because there was no hose or anything. It was just a tap.
So was that in the most recent boil water notice?
Yes.
Okay, because we were going to put do something to fix that problem, so I'll follow up on that, Robert, to make sure that happens.
Yes, and that was most of them were like that, and then
Yeah,
and they could put a hose on it so you could get a few metres away and make it easier for everyone.
yeah, I'm not sure.
Particularly old ladies and that who were a bit
Yeah.
wheezy.
We were looking at putting a table right underneath it so that they could put the container on the table.
Oh, yep. But apart from that, everyone was pretty good about it. They all realised there was nothing you could do. It was just one of those things. I caught up with Stuart Patterson about the hospital, the demolition. So it's gone through the Historical Places Trust at last with no objection from them. So I presume it's gone to the council for approval. Julie, would that be right? We'll go through for a demolition. Do you know anything about?
I don't know about that one, Robert.
Oh yeah, well they were getting all the paperwork done. It took them quite a lot of time, a lot of money to get approved out of Heritage to knock it down, and now it's gone into the next stage. So I'm not sure if that's. I presume they'd send it to the council for approval.
I would imagine it'd be a building consent or a resource consent, is it?
Isn't the submission on it?
Resource consent, I think he said it was to demolish because it's still a heritage building and people to it. Pardon?
There's been a page in the local Mirror or whatever it is, calling for like objections to the demolition of it.
Oh
Yeah.
And there's a big notice on the fence outside the old hospital too. So I guess that's the next stage.
That'll mean I would expect that it's in the resource consent process now.
Yep. Yeah, so hopefully it'll go through and they'll be able to get on to the next stage of it. There's plenty of discussion about bridges, people talking to me about bridges. And I just said, well, there's nothing we can do at this stage until people decide what can be done and how much money is available.
So I can give you an update on that if you like. James is preparing a report to go to the September council meeting about that.
Yeah, that's good. Might keep a few people happy.
That might not either.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. There's plenty of ideas out there what people think they can do and what they can do, and I said it all just comes down to money as to what's affordable and how much money is available to do it. Now I had a walk round in Naseby with the irrigation guys, with Hawkton Irrigation, and they were looking at a spot that possibly a dam could be built where water could be put into it, and what they call a turkey nest dam. Julie, you know all about them.
What sort of dam?
A turkey nest dam.
Never heard of it.
Oh, it's a local thing. It's what contractors call them. Just a dam that's built up out of the ground, so you can't get runoff into it.
I know. Yeah, I know what you mean now.
So, and they were looking at options of if they could do that somewhere where they could get water into and store it. So in a flood event, a rain event, they could actually have cleaner water that wasn't having water running into it to get into Naseby.
Okay.
So they're looking at sites there. We're having a bit of walk around, but that's something again for the council to look at with them and see what they think about it. But there was a lot of, they got a lot of backlash from it, particularly Keith Campbell got a lot of backlash from the dirty water that was coming around the race, and there was nothing Keith could do about it. So, and the only other thing I did was I forgot to mention, I went to the opening of the new school block in Ranfleet. It was before the last meeting, I forgot about mentioning it. And all the teachers are quite happy. There's bits and pieces they do like and they don't like, but I was in the woodwork room and the old woodwork desks we used in the 1970s are still there, for the very, very fact that Dale Byrne said they're better than the new ones they make. And they were all quite happy about the whole thing. Everything was sorted out. The teachers are happy. There's bits and pieces there, and the kids are happy. So it's good to see that it's going ahead, and the next stage has gone ahead, and they've managed to get everything knocked down and away without too many bloody incidences of asbestos, from the sounds of it. Good. And that's about all I got. Thank you. Yep. Nothing. Do we go to members' reports now, Wayne, or do I have to move that report?
I just need to move and second the chair's report, please.
If I move that report be accepted, please.
Second.
Okay, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried, thank you. Members' reports. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. I've got a wee couple of things here. Attended the last Arts Council meeting. They're really on a roll at the moment. They managed to fill all their committee members' slots, so they've got active presidents and secretaries that are really proactive, and the Arts Centre is being used pretty much every day of the week by a large variety of groups, from painters to little children doing ballet and all sorts of things, karate and pottery and all sorts of things. So they're on they're really on a roll at the moment. The other thing I brought up last time was the Chorus internet installation, where they cut squares out of the seal and the council's driveways and things. Well, they have been back around and patched up most of them, except for the edges of the footpaths. So that was quite good. That was a little improvement. The other thing is I've been encouraging anyone around to take part in the refuse or recycling and survey that's run by the council at the moment on the internet, to say what they would like to see and what they would like to see changed, and also encouraging people to follow the Mayor's Facebook presentations on the Three Waters, which really just gives you a little broad outline of what's going on, but it gets people informed about the big changes that are possibly coming. And the other thing was, I had a few people who I actually quite agree with talk to me about the entrance to the Maniototo Council building, where the ramp is, where it's kind of in a state of decay and the plaster's all falling off and parts of it are just like gravel. It's been like that for quite a lot of years, and I kind of assumed that originally when they did the earthquake strengthening or whatever that something would happen, but time has gone on and it's just looking very shabby, and actually is not a really good impression to give new people who come to town that happen to go into the council office. So I'm not sure what the process is with there or the time frame of when they're intending to tidy it up, but certainly needs it.
Yeah,
that's pretty much me.
Jill, do you have any idea of fixing the work in the front, doing the work at the front of the community building there? Is it?
I'm just sending an email away to Gareth now, and we will provide that information back to you when we've got a response.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, the refuse survey is quite interesting. It's still surprising how much green waste is going in the bins, isn't it?
I could just tell you, we actually have had, within 5 days, we'd had 307 responses to that survey. So I think it's, yeah, people are really, really interested in it, and maybe because they're at home a lot of them in lockdown, they had a bit more time on their hands to do the survey.
Yeah, and you talk to people and they ask you, and you say how much goes in the bins, and you tell them that every tonne that goes into the green waste costs you $50 per tonne for a charge, isn't it? Something like that.
Yeah.
It goes up every year, and you tell them how much it costs for rubbish every year, and they don't really believe you. And you say, if you don't put your green waste in, it'll be much cheaper for you.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's helping.
Either dig a smaller bin and then they can't put their rubbish and their green waste in there because it won't fit.
All right. Anything else, Sue?
No, nothing else, thanks.
Mark.
Fairly quiet, Robert. No bugger's been hassling me too much about anything, which is good. But I tuned into those 3 water sessions last week. They were very interesting. It's going to be an interesting sort of a carry on with that as time moves on. But,
Yes, I don't know if interesting's the word, really. It's
3.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting was just a word. Yeah, but it's. As Sue said, it might happen. Well, there's no might about it. Something's going to happen. So it's going to be space, really, isn't it? But yeah, there's people are actually getting, now that it's out there, I think in a few articles in the paper, people are starting to take a wee bit more interest in it. And the majority of them have got no idea of the complexity of it all. So there's going to be a lot of explaining have to be done once it all gets out, I think. But that's about me.
Yeah, the people I've spoken to about it, yeah, they don't even know what it means.
No, and there's a hell of a lot to try and, you can't just run it past them in a couple of minutes, can you? It's just, with the way everything ties in and ties out. But never mind, it's got a wee bit better handle on it myself now, which is good.
Yeah. How many hours is that on the Zoom? About 8 hours.
It was 5 days, about 2 hours a day. Oh, Friday was only about an hour, I think. But yeah, it was just. Yeah. But it was good, very good. Staff did a lot of work on it, and probably Tim's another one that's probably sick of bloody water at the moment. But it's the way it is.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Stu.
Yeah. No. Well, I've been quite busy, to be fair, because I've been at all those meetings, workshops, council ones. Yeah, 3 Waters. It's yeah. Well, you probably said interesting. I don't know if it's going to be interesting. I pretty much got out of what I thought of the meeting the other day, is that if even 50% of the people go in, the government's going to mandate it, and I think that's what the case is. And I see Luxton in an article in the Farmer magazine saying there's only a third that want to go in, and the others don't know or are going to go out. So I'm in the firm belief that we've got to start thinking about how that affects us if we go in or go out, and what the bribe effectively means, because I don't know if it gets mandated when and if they're going to do that deliberately, what the legal consequences of not being in. If you say you didn't want to go in and then they mandate it, what do they do with that bribe money? Because I don't know about the legalities of that. Neil Gillespie made a very good comment, because there's been a lot of chat. We've been having a lot of chat, not necessarily in the format of council, we are in just a few people over various issues. And his argument was a very good analogy, is that they're building the plane and learning to fly it at the same time. And I just think that that's a really dangerous thing for everyone, because they're just basing a lot of the ideas off modelling. And we just talked about the complex of Naisby's water alone. To me, they haven't done a very good job, or any government hasn't done a very good job of affordable housing. We look at COVID, we have issues, vaccination run-outs, all that sort of stuff. So 3 Waters, I think, is going to be a big, big thing. And if they're going to mandate it, I really think they should be coming out and saying that pretty soon, because it's really going to force council and staff and mayors against each other. And we're just seeing that even with the South Island mayors writing their letter, some mayors didn't want that, and I think Tim was in that camp. But yet his brother down the road was all for it. So, there's a whole lot of pressure at that other level as well. So it is big, but there's got to be a bit of other business goes on as well. But it's taken a real toll on a lot of the elected members, because we get it from everywhere, if you can well imagine, whether it be from the media, people on the street, but we're definitely getting it. Even, Sancho and Tim have done a great job and trying to make sure we keep balance and taking that point of view, of a balanced point of view. But sooner or later, I think there's going to be some stumps drawn, especially amongst a lot of elected members around New Zealand. and start asking some questions of the government, because really they're the ones that have got to tell the public what's doing. And that last workshop we talked about communication. It's not our job to tell people how to think. It's our job to offer the facts as we're told there. But the government is selling this concept to the people in New Zealand, not us. And I think that's something that I'm really hard on. It's like, you know, there's them that's selling the COVID, get vaccinated. It's up to you to do it. But the government are doing the three waters, are proposing the three waters. I've got to make sure they educate the population. Any reading we're getting on the council stuff is a lot of upset people regarding the advertising the government are doing, and that's been one of the biggest things. So there's a lot of work to be done here and a lot of water to go under the bridge, but I know that from a lot of the elected members I've been talking to, there's some pretty toey ones, and more so with the government than anything else. So it's getting a bit political, and Minister Mahuta is sort of saying that the South Island mayors are playing a game of politics, but reality is it affects everyone for the rest of New Zealand's eternity of water. So it's not just to do as we say, and you know, if they're going to mandate it, it'll be a whole lot of backlash, especially around a political regime. So I think there's a lot, the pressure's on a lot of elected members and staff and mayors across the South Island, and you know, so it's going to be messy, I'll tell you that. But when it gets closer to September, and I don't know when that decision time is really going to go, because as soon as there's been a bit of pushback, there's a bit of listening. And the local government New Zealand guys the other day and the water people we had on the Friday meeting were actually very good, but it worried me that only 50% go in. It's going to be mandated. That's my biggest concern. And the other thing is local government New Zealand. What does it look like? You know, it's just pre-runner to that and how we look like in 10 years' time. So some big decisions to be made. And I guess we're lucky we've got good people making them at the moment, but it's going to be tough on people. It's, you know, there's not a day that you don't go out anywhere and people into about three waters. So it's tough on the elected members as well. Trust me. Other than that, great spring, things looking good that way. The regional council, another thing with water, I think that's just a debacle at the moment, and hopefully the commissioners don't come in, and Marion Hobbs playing a reasonably low blow, I would have thought there. I got a letter the other day before it happened knowing it was on the way from Andrew Noon. But yeah, you know, we don't need the regional council being disbanded, a governor commissioner coming in there for the Maniototo care water, all these things happening, and then another outbreak of COVID, and it's a lot of these decisions being made under stealth or under urgency in government, which we don't have a say, so that's more of a concern.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much about me. We're going about that forever, and yeah, but it has been tasking on, I know it has been on staff, and well done to the staff for doing, but you can only do what you do. It's not our job to, we just deliver the message in a lot of cases.
Well, it's the trouble. Yeah.
And we wear the press. But no, that's pretty much me. It's been, I've done more work, taking more notes in the last month and a half at council I ever have, so don't know if I'm achieving a lot. That's about all though. Oh, that note, that's me.
On roading, Stu. So you're chairman of the roading. About all the low shoulders and that around the area on the Tarsiel roads, all the low shoulders. Is there a program for fixing them or?
Well, there's ongoing work on that, but I'm not exactly sure what's happening in our corner. We're out with James. I suppose we get back, we'll have to look around, but it's usually ongoing. They grade them up or redo the shoulders. The Ramfleet to Patera, haven't they done that?
Well, no, I haven't seen anything done for a long time. I was just wondering what they're up to, because some of the edge break it's creating is getting quite bad.
You might be able to help.
Yeah, they will be doing a program of work there. It's quite a narrow seal and it gets quite wide vehicles on it, and it's a constant piece of work that needs to happen. Yeah, so I will check that, but I know they're hoping to get out doing inspections later, next week around the network.
Yeah, it's not just the Maniototo roads, it's right up through the Ida Valley, like racecourse, Roma Cow. Trucks are trying to move over to get out of the way of cars, and there's not enough road. Yeah,
we do have an issue with a lot of edge break around the district. And I think that's maybe a result of pushing our reseal lives out a bit further, but or bigger vehicles on the roads as well. Yeah, what's the trouble? Too many trucks probably.
Well, just other real issues, you know, you look at what happened in the water, and that was one of the regimes that we asked local government New Zealand what's happening in the transit. You know, there's a real movement of a green government to go for cars and parking rides and bike lanes and all that, and you really wonder at the expense of what in these rural communities and these rural roads. So that alone, what you were talking about there, and even gravel and the bridges and all that, in that last Targa Regional Roading meeting I was at, that was one of the major concerns from Kurau to Te Anau. So we're not alone, and just where those funding lines come, and we look in the future, and with petrol cars maybe going out, or the wish list everywhere else, getting money is going to be tough.
Yeah. But the problem is it gets worse and worse and worse, and it just gets more expensive to fix it, whereas a wee bit of work at the start, and it's not as expensive, it's cheap. Preventing it rather than trying to fix it once it's broken. But as you say, if we haven't got the money to do it, we can't do anything about it. Think of nothing else, Stu?
No, pretty much. No, we opened up, had a look with Julie and the staff, and Maria and Clyde, that development up there. It looks really good. There's a lot of good work being done up there, and James is all over that, and I think he's doing a pretty good job. So, no, we just got to make sure we bat for our corner over here, and all these things look pretty. The mountain looks pretty big at the moment. When they're getting funding for roads or water or three waters or bridges, looks like it's going to be a tough gig. And we're furthest most inland port in New Zealand, aren't we, Macau or thereabouts? So we're a long way from the big cities.
Thank you. Can I have someone move those members' reports to be accepted, please?
I'll second it.
Who was that, Stu?
Me.
And Sue.
Sue's seconded it. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried, thank you. Governance report. Where are we? Has everyone read it? I got the minutes from Maniototo Arts Community meeting the other day. Can I have someone move that report be accepted, please?
Move it.
So, seconder, please. Who was that?
Who?
Stu Duncan. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried, thank you. Right. I'm doing all right here. I've got my people. Date of the next meeting is the 14th of October 2021. Right, so now we need a resolution to exclude the public.
How do you do that?
You just turned the Zoom off, do you, Rebecca?
I do after you've moved it.
Right, so could someone please move that we've Mark Harris, seconder please.
I'll second it then.
Stu Duncan, all those in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. Right. Confirmation